Welcome to another edition of Insurance Questions Podcast, episode 101. Today is July 4th. Happy July 4th to all our listeners and all our veterans. It is Thursday. I'm your buddy Eddie Buffalo. You know Donnie Lowe. And this gentleman right here is Greg Traves. I'm going to let him tell you who he is. But before we get started, I wanted everybody to know that all the statements and opinions by Eddie Buffalo, Donnie Lowe, and Greg Traves are purely for entertainment purposes. Do your thing real quick, Don.
Sure, I'll take over Sarah's responsibilities here today.
Hello, Don.
Whatever you do, wherever you see or hear us, like, subscribe, click the fan mail button, download the videos on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, and we'd really appreciate that. And thanks for joining us today.
And I'd like to say, I spoke to Sarah before the show, and she wants to apologize for not being here today, Greg, and to our listeners. But she took on a new client, and she had to meet with them today. And our clients come first, so we're very flexible on many things, but our clients will always come first over all of this. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Mr. Traves.
All right. Well, I'm pushing 76 here. I'm retired from the military and from the federal civil service. I was born in Toronto, Canada, along with my brother and sister as well. And our parents moved us to Santa Monica, California, and on the 20th of June of 1956. My father was brought here hired to come to Los Angeles and start work. So he worked for a man named Bill Lear, who at the time had a avionics and radars type business that in the aerospace industry. Later on, he went ahead and built the Lear steam turbine car and the Lear jet. So
that's amazing. I was going to ask you if that's what that meant.
Yeah,
Yes.
definitely. I that's a fact. Yeah. So
I've known you for a bit, Greg. I've never heard that nugget of goodness there. I didn't even know that. I'm learning stuff today too.
That's great.
Learning what did you say?
About you, more about you.
Well, yes. We're revealing these things. So my brother and sister and I lived in the Los Angeles area. We moved to Redondo Beach. Lived there for a number of years. So we went to school in Redondo. I went to Redondo High School, graduated in 1966, and we learned all kinds of things. I only knew about ice hockey, and I learned to skate when I was 3 in Toronto. But when I came to the United States, I saw a baseball game, a Little League, and to find out what that was all about. And so we were learning a lot of things. One of the great things we got to do was to get away from the usual routine of what we ate. We were introduced to Chinese food, Mexican food, pizza, all the stuff we lived on when we were teenagers, and that was one thing. Also, the beach. My parents made sure we knew how to swim, and my sister and brother and I were in competitive swimming. My brother and I were in the junior lifeguards down at the beach. We knew how to make beach saltwater rescues and other things.
Is that on one of those like lakeshore drives they always have out there?
That's in Toronto. Yeah, no, not there. No, it's just I'm talking about Redondo Beach and Hermosa Beach, which is there's towns south of LAX. So that's where we grew up pretty much. And
it's interesting you said about eating the Chinese food, where you learned about that in California. But in this, I know, like now, and even in the 70s and 80s, there was a real big Chinatown in Toronto.
Yeah.
Was it not there when you were younger, growing up?
We lived outside of Weston, on the road toward Malton Field, which is now Pearson International.
Oh,
At
wow.
the time, my
Is that
father,
near is that like near Etobicoke?
yeah, well, I was born in Etobicoke, and Weston's just north of that area.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so anyway, we learned how to swim and swim in pools and also in the salt water, the beaches, and so that's about it for childhood to speak of. But from there, my brother, my sister, and I did go on to college, and after high school.
And how did you get to Buffalo?
Well, uh, my wife's father was a construction engineer, and of course, my background as a civil engineer meant frequent moves, and she went through that as well. And so she understood what that was like. She was used to moving from one place to the other. We moved a lot when I was a kid, and going to college and going into the military, and then even into the Army Reserve. There were a lot of travel involved, and we did change locations now and then. So we lived in Dayton, Ohio. That's where we both retired, and we said to each other, you know what? We've been having people tell us where we're going to live all our lives. Why don't we figure out where we would like to live? Oh, so that conversation got going, and we thought it over, and we were watching Sabres games when we lived in Ohio. We could see those.
Oh, okay.
That's
In
fun.
2008 and 2009. I had officially retired in 2006 when I reached 60. So we saw that, and we thought, we got to check it out. And not just the hockey, but look at the prices, housing, whatnot. So we made trips up here on weekends from Dayton. It's about an 8-hour drive each way. So we'd go up and look around at housing and things like that. And there was Tim Hortons, which was
Yeah.
new to us somewhat, although I had been going back and forth to Canada enough times to recognize Tim Hortons.
Oh,
I have a
We
hockey.
started building them in Texas, Greg.
Good. I wish we could have some of the places from the South, like Shoney's. Shoney's is in Tennessee and Georgia. And of course, Waffle House. We like Waffle House. In fact, we've got our Waffle House mugs around here someplace. Yeah.
I have a question for you that I don't know.
Yes, go ahead.
Is where did you meet the lovely Pat?
Ice skating. What else?
I mean, where were you when you met her?
Oh, Anaheim, California, across the street from Disneyland. There was a
California.
Yeah. Across the street from Disneyland was this ice arena. And
I love Pat. She's a wonderful lady. And it must have been really hard for him. We have talked personally about this, how hard it was to see you go overseas and things like that. So,
yeah,
I mean,
I did.
now that you guys get to be together all the time, I mean, they're a wonderful couple, Don. Greg lives right by you, and I've never seen him once polish a gold bar like you do. Oh, you rich people out there.
Who's polishing cars?
No, he's from Williamsville, so he's polishing his gold bars out there all the time, Greg.
Oh, gold bars. I thought you said cars.
So before I derail this show, I'm going to refer to my co-host, Donnie Lowe. And
Okay.
I know you had a couple questions that were prepared for Greg. Why don't you go for it there, Don?
Yeah, so your service. First off, thank you for serving.
Yes,
and
thank
it's
you,
it's
Greg.
appropriate, as we celebrate Independence Day, that you're a very special guest on the podcast. And so, thank you again, Greg, for all of your service to our country.
You're welcome.
As somebody that did not serve, it means the world to me.
Let
So
me
thank you.
answer your question with a question. Uh, were you ever in the civil service or local government in any way, or connected with the government?
No, no. I mean, I've done a lot of volunteer work, for different things, but never officially or formally
Yeah.
like that.
Okay. Yeah.
I painted fire hydrants one year in the summer when I was a provisional employee. When I was 16 or 17. Does that count?
Well, yes, we love dogs too.
Ha! Whoa,
Couldn't be.
whoa!
Perfect.
I'm usually the one with the jokes here, Greg. My spot,
I'm
okay?
I'm the professional. I'll tell the jokes.
There you go.
All right, go
So,
ahead.
Some
Go
people think
ahead.
I'm funny.
so your tenure with the service, you're a civil engineer. So one of the things that I was curious about is, what was maybe the most challenging project that you worked on, and what made it challenging?
Well, I guess it had to be the bridge we rebuilt in Afghanistan.
Mm.
Um, there was a concrete bridge that was built by the Russians outside of Bagram Air Base. I
Wow.
was stationed out of Kabul, but it was a hour and a half drive each way to Bagram, which you saw many over the years. You saw pictures of the soldiers at Bagram Air
Right.
Base. It was an old fighter jet base, and all our aircraft were landing on it. I wasn't involved in that part of it, but there was a concrete bridge over occasionally dry wash, but occasionally flooding in just outside of Bagram, and it was on the road to Kabul. Uh, the story was that it was built by the Russians and built the highway out in the middle of the desert there in an area unoccupied so that they could bring transports and the tanks and trucks and what have you from Bagram to Kabul safely. The other old route they used was going by through a number of villages, and they were getting ambushed and having a lot of trouble. So they just built a new road away from that. And
Ah,
the concrete bridge was blown up by our Air Force because there was a T-72 tank hiding underneath it somewhere. I had a picture of that, and so there's a nice big hole in the bridge, and there was a local contractor who was an engineer and contractor, and he and I got together about it, and it was actually what we call precast, made of precast components.
mm,
Unfortunately, we didn't have such facilities to make those. So what he says, let's just put up shoring and put up wood and put in the rebar and then pour the concrete in that way and let it dry. And then after 30 days, you strip off the wood and then you get to the beams and that'll all hold up.
oh, so you had to let the concrete cure for 30
That's what I was
days
going to
in the
ask.
form? Yeah.
And I wanted to make a statement to all my friends and family back in Buffalo, New York, that want to know why I live in Texas with the heat. Tell them what the heat was like in Afghanistan, Greg.
Not bad.
Oh, yeah.
We were up. Kabul's up a mile high. It's
Okay.
and I've been up to as high as 13,000 feet one day. Went up, took a road up through the Salong Tunnel up there that runs north and south. But the heat was in maybe in the 90s. It was a very dry air. It snowed at in Kabul. It would normally snow. We had
Oh,
little snow.
That's crazy.
Yeah, no, it is a high desert to say the least. So
mhm.
we were out there in January looking at this bridge pile of rubble, and we got together and sketched the components. We could see what we needed to do, and we sat down and prepared an estimate, and I did some drawings. It was pretty not as involved as we would be if it were in United States.
Mhm.
I was handed before we deployed from Atlanta over to Afghanistan. My
Atlanta's hot.
Yeah, that's a long. That's about 9 hours, 9.5 hours ahead of us. And so my boss handed me a PowerPoint slide on printed, and it said repair Bagram Bridge, 30 days to do it, and cost not to exceed 200,000. I don't
Wow.
know who pulled all that out of the air, but uh, uh, the long and the short is it was more than 30 days for very legitimate reasons. And it did cost about a little over 200,000. Uh,
Wow,
so,
That's amazing.
yeah,
that is.
but so we worked on that. I had no graph paper. I had some engineering books, and I had a pencil and a Swiss Army knife to sharpen it with, and a couple of bits of triangles, things we could use for drafting. So uh, I did up all plans. I happened to find some 11 by 17 paper in in the embassy. I happened to be walking by a supply room, and I saw it, and I asked them, "Can I have some of it?" They said, "You can have all if you want." So a few, and just a few. So on a few of those with graph paper, that's how the plans were made, which I still
Wow.
have. We also did quantity estimates, and then he and I sat down. I said, "Well, how much is this and that?" And he was really the person we picked, and uh, we worked very closely. So it meant rebuilding the bridge, and the bridge was finished soon after I left. Uh, but a lot of us were sent home. We had completed most of our tasks, so another group was coming in to take over. But anyway, the bulk of that work was done. It was underway.
Oh, very nice.
It
That's what a great story that is.
Yeah, yeah, it's a true story. Yeah,
Greg, I have two questions for you.
yeah.
I want to know about the lapel pins that you have on, and I always call you Colonel. What was the rank you actually retired with?
My retirement rank was lieutenant colonel. I was served as a lieutenant colonel for many years in the Army Reserve, um, and the uh, the proper title to address usually is just colonel. But if I were answering a phone, I'd say this is lieutenant colonel.
So I was right on then.
They shorten it. They just do that out of more convenience, and that seems to work pretty well.
That's
Yeah,
Nice.
just
During your career, Greg, I should say Colonel now, right?
good.
So,
well, I'm colonel
yeah.
retired. Yeah, but you
Okay.
I retain the title. I don't normally use it.
Uh, so throughout your vast, service to the country, where, which country did you like the most that you were assigned to?
That's hard to say. In overseas deployments in war, I liked Afghanistan. I had done
Really? I wouldn't have
three.
guessed that.
Well, they had a good sense of humor, and that made it nice. And we really had. It was very safe for us for a very good reason because we were spending money on construction and repairs. We were buying everything. There were
Uh,
a certain amount of food, and
Greg, is that Thomas I hear in the background?
yes, it's because I shut the windows behind me. He was sunbathing, and I had to pick him up and close this. Every time I'm on the phone, he has to meow. So he gets
And
he's
I'll
not
tell you,
center of attention. But to get back to your question,
I can see why you liked it there if they had a good sense of humor because I'll tell you, don't be surprised, folks. I've heard Greg with some zingers. He's got some great stories, and
I got
just when
lots
you
of
think it's
stories.
going one way, it goes another. Okay, all right.
So yeah, so yes, they had a great sense of humor. We were quite safe because we were spending money, and so no one in their right mind would attack us.
sure. That's interesting.
we paired them, we paid for goods and services with American dollars, and we had a budget to deal with. They didn't have any banks or anything, so they were just sort of using their own local currency to pay for things. Um, so yeah, we got along nicely. We missed each other all very much, and we had some very good times there. We got to eat flatbread, which was like unleavened bread, was common, and
Gotcha.
meat and rice. Practically, we even went to restaurants there, enjoyed meals.
Oh, nice,
Um,
nice.
yeah, one local neighbor invited me over to for lunch, and he was some sort of supplier of goods, of merchandise. So we talked. He wanted to know how to do that, and I explained we had a contracting office and a supply office. If he went over there and find out what we were buying, he could certainly put his estimates in, to purchase, for us to purchase from. But that was in a different department of mine.
Right, right. Now, I guess the next question would be, like, which country did you like the least? And obviously, if you're serving in the middle of a war, I mean, I don't know if there's
That's a
any.
tough question. Yeah.
Yeah,
There are no
that's,
good places in war, now that's for sure.
yeah.
But we were not in Afghanistan. There were skirmishes with some of our soldiers, as well as other NATO soldiers were there. My type of work was, again, construction engineering. I had an engineering department of a number of engineers assigned to us, and we all picked projects. I said, we need this done or that done. They volunteered to do it. I said, well, let me know how it goes. And I got some good feedback for that. I had to sit through a lot of daily staff meetings. But I had one assistant. If I was busy, he could go. That was nice. We ran, we get up early in the morning. I put the coffee pot on, and they come ambling in. And so we drank coffee. And then we were told we had to take malaria pills early on. So I made sure they all had malaria pills. You got a daily one. I would say it's Malaria Monday. Let's all take our pill together and make sure you don't forget. Apparently, there were 3 Italian soldiers nearby who had decided they didn't need malaria pills, and of course, they came down with malaria, which
Oh my gosh.
not good. It's not
Really?
something. Yeah, it's a permanent thing.
Oh my God.
You get malaria. Yeah, they have to treat you for the rest of your life.
Wow.
I don't know all the details. I have seen another country I went to where we all had to take malaria pills, and my boss had a bad reaction to it, and he was in his room. He couldn't really do much. He was sweating and shivering at the same time. This is down in Honduras, and he was sweating, and like I say, sweating, and he was cold at the same time. So he had to keep blankets on him and his sweatpants and top to try to stay warm enough. But it was he had taken the pill, but he had this very bad reaction. He was laid up. We were there a couple of weeks, and he was laid up through the whole thing. So I had to
That's
take
something.
over his job, and the sergeant major, who was with me, he and I completed the mission by ourselves. So,
Oh, that's something.
so malaria is a problem. You have to respect it.
Yeah, and that's something I think the general layperson back here, at home in the States, when you hear of deployments, like, that's not at the forefront of our mind. I think, just things like that,
Yeah,
vaccinations and
sure,
and
right.
that.
Yeah, we're well taken care of in our country. America is the best place on earth to be, and we do take care of people in public health. And some people don't want to listen to that, but they get sick, and that's unfortunate. But
No, that's
for the most part, public health is available to everybody, and we can have clean water and reasonably clean air and things like that. So
that's
naturally,
true.
we live longer, get great food, and we're going to do real well.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful.
What else you got for Greg?
Yeah, I was going to ask about so throughout your career, did you have any leaders or commanders that you served under that you maybe respected or liked more than anybody else? Like a lot of times, even in the professional career, you get that. If you're lucky, you get maybe two, but you typically have like one manager that once you part ways, you're never going to get somebody that good again. Did you have a commanding officer that you really respected like that?
I can think of one or two. Uh, um, yes, I can think of two. One when I was stationed in Alaska, my boss was a commander. I was a lieutenant in the Navy. Uh, uh,
So, just so people know, he was in the Navy and the
yeah,
Army.
spent 10
So that
years.
blows me away every time I
Yeah.
hear this.
That's a long story, but as they say,
That's
um,
for
but
next year's episode.
so spent 10 years in the Navy Civil Engineer Corps, which is much like the engineer branch of the Army, and like the Corps of Engineers, which is similar. So we did base engineering, we did contracting, contract administration, and had a number of, as always, unusual assignments. They don't fit. They don't fit the mold of anything. It's hard for them to figure out. This is just different. The bridge was different. A lot of stuff I did was not usual. So I spent 10 years in the Navy, and then I spent 20 in the Army Reserve. I was automatically branch qualified because I had a lot of experience, and I had taken a number of Army engineer courses, and had that as well as having an engineer license and a degree in engineering. So I had came into the Army Reserve with a lot of stuff in my resume. So that's how I got in.
Well,
That's
listen,
great.
we have time for one more question, Greg. And I'd
Okay.
like to ask you and really think about it. What does it mean to you to be an American?
Yes. The thing I wrote down, let me find out yet. Oh, the key word is responsibility. America is a democracy. In a democracy, each of us have a responsibility to obey the law, support the law, defend the Constitution, and of course, pay our taxes. Those are things we are held responsible for. Driver's license issued to us, we have to meet the standards of safe driving. The engineer license, what is given can be taken away. And that happens to some engineers and professional people. That happens to some attorneys, for example, or those in the medical profession.
Even us with our insurance licenses.
Insurance, you have a great responsibility, and finance, but insurance, a great responsibility because everyone's depending. Us folk know that that our wives and kids, if any, will be provided for, and that is a job where an insurance agent is held to a high regard in terms of their behavior and things like that, much like we do in the military. So that back to responsibility in a free, so-called free country, not dominated by a dictator or in some cases countries I've been in where the high priests run the country. they have literally like canon law of the religion and also the common law all mixed up in one. Um, so as a democracy, we have a responsibility to protect it through voting and paying our taxes and obeying the law. If, if in a case where it's certain, go back a few hundred years for kings or generals or conquerors of other types, they wrote the law, whatever they, not necessarily in writing, they just said, this is what I want you to do or not do, and that there was no discussion. So that
just by decree.
By decree is a good way of saying it. Sure. So again, to be an American is to be the good American. One is to be the responsibility. Probably the other half is we are a nation of immigrants, and everything we ever did in this country was done by immigrants. And the only people that we should say we're native, of course, is the North American Indian. And we've all migrated here from Europe and Asia and other places. So, but each generation comes in. My parents came in from they were used to being in the working class in Canada and England. My parents were both born in England, traditional European ways. So that my brother and sister and I were able to get good educations, and my brother did very well, each of us in our own way. Our children are very, very well educated and have jobs, substantial jobs that they're doing. So, and so that you arrive in America as an immigrant, landed immigrant, your parents, and then you bring the kids. So my children are first generation Americans, and so they're up and running. And other people arriving in our country on a daily basis, and want the best for their children, and they sacrifice a lot to allow their children to go to medical school or dental school, into other professions.
So true. Well,
Greg,
well stated.
As an American, Don and I both really thank you for your service as fellow brother knights. I mean, I look at you boys as brothers, and I always will. And on a personal note, about a month ago, I was having some issues, and I talked to Greg, and it was basically drinking. There's a lot of people out there that have trouble with whatever. I never thought of myself as having a problem, and I told him, I said, Greg, I really want to drink. And what he said to me, I don't know if he thought about it or even thought what type of impact he made on me, but he said to me, Eddie, it takes a lot of character not to drink. And that meant so much to me. And every time I think about wanting to have another drink, I think about Greg. And I do thank you for that, my friend.
Anytime.
From my heart, it's really. Wow. So I'm going to close up the show like we always do. If you like working with people like us, the place you can find us is www.ebiagency.com, 716-306-2020. That's the most business you're going to get out of this episode for me, because I wanted to be all about celebrating the person that you are and the patriot that you are. James Gregory Traves, retired lieutenant colonel. Did I get it all in there?
That's about the size of it.
And then a smart aleck wise guy every once in a while, all right?
I think I've told you a few stories about that too.
He loves the Three Stooges, folks, just so you know. All right. Great. I know Donnie was talking a few things about that.
Stooges fans. We started watching it when we were in about third grade. We came to the United States, and when we lived in Canada, my dad had finally bought us a TV, and but we could only see one channel, which was CBS Buffalo.
yeah.
No,
Yeah.
so we saw all the shows in the early '50s that were on there, you know.
Funny.
But we discovered all our neighbors had taller antennas and they could pick up more stations. So we used to go over there and watch TV in somebody else's house. And we said to Dad, you know, we want to see these other channels. And he says, you only need one channel. You know, you cannot envision having all these channels. So we went to Los Angeles. We had much better reception. We had all kinds. We just turned the little dial around and sit there and watch, you know, cartoons. And
We had to actually get up and turn the dial, kids.
well,
You know,
I
no
think
remote control or anything.
the channel, yeah, the channel knob was missing. So
I hate when it fall
I
off. and you
I
can't find it.
ingeniously picked up a pair of pliers. My brother and sister say, we want to watch that. Okay, click, you know.
You were the remote control.
Right.
Heard of it. No, never heard.
All right.
And the screen was, you know,
Little.
about the size of almost
Well,
as big as a file.
We are gonna wrap it up. Thank
Okay.
you so much, Greg, for being on here, and to
Okay.
all our listeners, thank you. I mean, we keep on growing by leaps and bounds. We actually hit 10.2 million on one of our episodes last week, so we're pushing into really high territory right now, and it's all because of people that listen, like you folks do. So I hope you and your family, you guys, and all our listeners and the family have a wonderful and safe July 4th. Till we meet again, it's your buddy Eddie Buffalo for Donnie Lowe and retired Lieutenant Colonel James Gregory Traves. You boys have a great day, okay? Stick around when we're ending the show, guys. I want to talk to both of you. All right?
All right.
So,
Ciao.
Don, where's the button? Where's
It's-
the damn...
It's down there somewhere.
No, it's up on top on this new...
Oh,
Yeah.
they moved it.
There's the
All
pan.
right. Take care.